Hey guys, this is Bob from Scratch. This video is about the Fade application, a plugin for Ableton Live, as you can see here behind me. We'll start with a quick clip around what it sounds like, courtesy by Alex, and then Nick will tell you a little bit about how it can be applied towards sound design and engineering in Ableton Live itself as well. Afterwards, we'll talk with Darren from Isotonik Studios, and the Fade application will also be available at isotonikstudios.com, where you can download it and get it. Enjoy!
In this session, we're going to have a look at how we can use the Fade Max for Live plugin as a bit of a sound design tool for coming up with some creative sonic ideas. So we've got a basic MIDI pattern here, and we're going to add on a stock instrument. So let's add a wavetable. Let's, for instance, let's try a boulder blaster, which is a bit of a nice, harsh stock instrument. Let's listen to that. Okay, so it's fairly static, but we want to add a bit of character to that. So let's use the fade. So to find the fade, you go to Max for Live Devices, and it's a Max MIDI effect. And we're going to drop an instance of the fade onto a new MIDI channel. What we're wanting to do is modulate the filter cutoff using the fade. So first of all, let's click Map and go over to our instrument. And now all of a sudden we can see the filter cutoff being modulated between a low point and a high point. If you wanted to hear what that sounds like. Cool, so we're already starting to get a little bit of character out of that. You can also, change the high and low points. So cool. So what else we're wanting to do is automate some of these patterns here. So what we can do is create a new MIDI clip on the track that has the fade plugin. And let's just throw in some random notes. The first pattern in the fade plugin starts at note C1. So if you're wanting to trigger pattern number 1, that starts at note C1. Then it goes D1, E1, etc. So let's just add in some random notes. I'm going to just throw in a few random ones. Let's just step through some of these in a sequence. Let's see what this sounds like. Nice, so we're already starting to get some nice rhythmic effects going on there. The Fade plugin also has a second page of mapping tools. So what we can do is we can also map a second parameter to say maybe the envelope. We can probably change the range as well. So let's try that. Cool. All right, so we're already starting to get a bit of character out of that. I think the next thing we can probably try doing is adding a second instance of the fade. So on the second instance, what we're probably going to do is let's make some of our own patterns. So we're going to hit clear on the first pattern, and I want to just start throwing in some dot points on our function curve. So what we can do, if we wanted to add a bit of curve to this, you can hold the option key, on your keyboard, and drag up and down. So we can actually do something like that. And you can actually choose the time period for the curve or for the fade. And we also want to hit store on that pattern there. So let's try mapping this parameter here to, I don't know, the resonance. And now we can see that is moving in unison with the fade pattern that's being generated from that. Let's just quickly create a couple more patterns, and let's see what we can get. Now, if you don't want a particular dot point, you can hold down the Shift button and you can click on it, and then you can delete the point. So let's make this a nice short one. Let's say quarter of a bar or quarter of a measure. Let's store that. Now let's see what this sounds like with 2 instances of the fade, modulating 3 different parameters on the clip. And let's see what we started with originally. So as you can see, you can get some pretty interesting rhythmic sonic ideas from just playing around with variations of patterns and MIDI input. It's all about experimenting, seeing what it can do for you, finding those little happy accidents sometimes that will create a bit of a pattern that you probably otherwise wouldn't have been able to create with some of the standard plugins that are out there. So definitely explore it, have some fun, and thanks so much for joining us. Speak next time. Peace.
Okay, great. So we're here today with Darren, and we're going to talk a little bit about the fade application, and we're going to talk a little bit about the VSTs and the plugins and these kind of things. But before we go into that, Darren, please introduce yourself, who you are, where you are, and what do you do?
Hi, Bob. Hi, Alex. I'm Darren Cowley. I'm the originator, beginner, director, CEO, curator of a collective of developers known as Isotonik Studios. We have a website that's been developing over the last decade or so, grown out of the origin of myself wanting to develop devices that would make DJing easier for me, working with Ableton Live. Originally started out working purely with MIDI controllers and looking at how to hack them with the likes of Bohm's MIDI translator. As a result of the work that I undertook with that, which still to this day is probably our highest watched video, I ended up getting an invite by Ableton themselves to when they launched their beta of Max for Live, which I think last week was actually 12 years ago. Crazy. So that's quite a sobering thought. I've been patching around with Max since then, trying to get more and more out of it and making various bits and pieces more useful. I tend to pick up a new MIDI controller and go, this is great, but what if? And it's always a passion of me to want to get that extra bit of value out of equipment that I bought, even though my wife just simply calls them buttons, because they do all pretty much look the same. It's a different set of colored buttons this time.
Exactly.
I tend to have the packages delivered in the day now while she's out at work. It makes a lot more sense.
In terms of MIDI controllers, I mean, the general look of a MIDI controller is that you have some pads, that you have some knobs and things like that. How do you see the development of a MIDI controller in terms of the tools you can use to tweak sounds or something like that?
Yeah, I think I've had I'll say most, not all, MIDI controllers across my desk. I've been in a very fortunate position that as Isotonik Studios, we've been approached by a number of manufacturers and we've done testing and we've built devices for them. So I've got quite a lot of experience of different types of stuff. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The buttons started very much as click switches. Then they moved into these big rubberized pads with not a great deal of feedback. And they kind of morphed into the kind of MPE touch. So there's more than just striking it, which for some things, for expressive playing, are fantastic. But for things like DJing, I quite like the old school. If you look at Native Instruments Machina Jam, there's a definitive click when you launch a clip, and that's quite satisfying because you can hold your finger over it, touch it, and then launch when you want. Whereas something like the push, you've got to hover your finger perfectly and strike it at a certain point, which is quite akin to a lot of the DJ mixers, etc., that have brought Akai MPC pads to the fore and that kind of thing. The Akai Force was a slight deviation, being it's standalone and has its own synth engine, which is very, very deep and gets better with each beta release. But as a controller, not only having the touch pads, all MPE-ish, you had the row of dials, which were touch capacitive, and mini LED screens to tell you what you're in control of. And that connection between moving around a live set and being able to see what you're in control of, which originated, I think, if you go back as far as the Novation Remote SL, something like those lines, really, really useful. And whilst the push has that, then the Force threw in the big touch capacitive LED screen as well. Its integration with live isn't as brilliant as we'd have hoped, but then it's in direct competition with the push itself. So it's a little bit like if you look at all the DVS software out there, and it's one piece of software like Serato, which is the one that genuinely I'm a fanboy of and have been forever. Each new mixer that comes out has the standards, and then it might have an extra little bit, like the scratch bank that came with the DJMS 11. And then you wait a little bit, and then the other mixers like the Rain 72, they get that feature added. So it's everybody's in the same marketplace but working off the same software. And what I like is the fact that with Max for Live, with Live's API, the Live Object model, they haven't got a closed system that you can't build on top and keep building and do things that they would never have imagined, possibly in some cases that customers would never have asked for. But I just kind of like doing it because I can, and then working it back into something that's actually useful. Because there's lots of projects that spend a lot of time on that no one ever sees.
That's crazy.
It's interesting that you mentioned this MPE, this MIDI polyphonic expression. If I think that's the correct abbreviation. For people that don't know, I mean, it's a very interesting technique or an idea, I think. So when you touch something, you trigger a MIDI value or a note or something, but then when you move your finger or when you do something else, it also does something, for lack of a better word. And I think those kind of controllers, actually, there's not many of them. There's a couple of brands who really do a lot with it, and there's a couple of bespoke companies who are doing this, usually founded by one guy, and they make this keyboards or whatever it might be. There's a few of them out there. And they seem to be almost like very niche, even though the idea is for musicians. It seems like a no-brainer. I mean, if you think about a guitar, you pick up a guitar, and now I can't play guitar, but my daughter plays it, and I know from what I've tried to fiddle a little bit with it. You pick up a string, and then you move your fingers a little bit. You get this kind of vibrato or resonance and different sound characteristics, and that's very much the similar idea with MPE, where you touch something and then you kind of move or do things, and then it becomes more bright, or you change the pitch slightly with pitch bend or whatever that might be. And from a musician perspective, it makes total sense, but somehow I have the feeling it's not really taking off. I mean, there's a couple of brands out there who've tried.
I think most notably Roley.
And they actually went into bankruptcy.
Yeah,
so there you go. That's kind of, it seems to be the technology is out there, so there is ways of doing it, and from what I've seen, it can sound really great, but it's just somehow not picking up, and I wonder what it is.
It takes I think it takes a lot of expert or experience in playing. The thing is that the possibilities of assigning parameters or effects to this function is so overwhelming that nobody gets really or has the time to step or dive into it, you know. When you compare it to the traditional instrument like a guitar, I mean, you have just the guitar, you have just the strings, you have just one sound, you know, and you're somehow restricted. And this applies also of using or working with samples. It's so overwhelming what you could use, you know, and sometimes it's better when you're restricted somehow. And I think that applies to this in a way.
Totally agree. Yeah. If you look at something like the Novation circuit, the concept of it was there are no labels on the macros at the top. It was originally launched without an editor. It had the inbuilt sounds, that was it. And it was very much the restriction of capabilities that caught people's imagination. And I totally agree with you. When you have to spend half an hour setting up to make a sound that it does,
exactly.
I know from experience that Max for Live devices, which are editable, there's no copy protection, you can open it up and play with it. 99% of our customers are taking that Max for Live, put it on a track and wanting it to work.
Exactly.
1% will open it up to learn a bit, but it's just instant gratification. And I know Rowley went down the route with their own software, Equator, etc., with presets. But it only recently did Ableton Live support MPE in Live 11. And there's a limited number of other pieces of software out there that do it. But again, you've then got to go, so I make my pitch with the press, and when I move it up, that needs to be routed to an LFO. And it's
too much.
Exactly. And the other thing is it holds back the creative flow, you know, because you're just thinking about technology, theoretical functionality. And another thing is, I had a discussion with a really famous music producer here in Germany, and he told me that he sold a lot of his equipment and really focused just in his, in his dungeon to one machine, just one or two or three machines, you know. And when you compare it to, to people like Björk, for example, I saw a video from Björk, 20 years ago, and she just sat in her room, and there was just, one drum computer, a mixer, and then an effects device, and it was it, you know, and she created just awesome music due to the restriction. And today it's just, like I said, overwhelming. In a way.
If Ed Sheeran can be the world's best-selling artist off of a guitar and a looper pedal in his voice, then us collectors of different pieces of equipment, we're doing it because we like the pieces of equipment. And I'm now trying to get the full value out of everything I've bought and I've got before I go and buy something else. And I moved from my MIDI controller obsession into cameras a couple of years ago, and buying lenses, and then I only realized in the last period of lockdown that I was just replacing what I'd previously done with MIDI controllers with the film and everything else. So I've knocked that one on the head as well. I do like Amazon turning up every day with a new cable, though. Cables, I think, will always be a good thing to order.
The sort of obsession with more stuff or more gear or more devices. It's kind of a nice bridge to what you guys do with Isotonik, with your with your kind of with your shop. So people can buy VSTs there, right? And they can find plugins for Max for Live, for instance.
Yeah, we do quite a wide range of stuff, and we've expanded thanks in part to kind of introductions that we've had with manufacturers. So we originally produced the Novation circuit editor for Novation, as at the time they didn't have the capabilities in-house to do their own. And we helped support that for a couple of years before they launched their own web-based and then standalone component software, which is excellent, but we still have our own pro version of the editor that does some features that theirs doesn't. And as a result of that, we started to find people that were using that product to build packs. And so there's probably quite a few independent artists out there selling their own packs, like of Cuckoo, for example, but we probably have the largest repository of Novation circuit packs, and now it's gone into Novation circuit tracks, Novation circuit rhythm. We've expanded the range out in that way as well. So yeah, probably half of our customers now come from that avenue, and the other half from the Ableton Live side, which we have a few VSTs, but it's mainly Max for Live devices, sound packs, like the Inspired Rave Stabs for Live 11, which uses all the new macro functionalities. Really, really cool. And then racks and effects and stuff like that. We have one very simple rule in the collective. We have a Facebook group, and if someone has an idea and I say, yep, that sounds like a great one, I could be passionate about that, we share it in the group and decides that, yeah, we've already done that, let's not do it again. Or everyone contributes an idea, etc., and it becomes better than the sum of one person's idea.
That's awesome.
And that is what I've to be fair, that's what I've enjoyed most. That's
so cool.
The main reason I've taken a step back from coding myself, because as you guys know, you can get good at something, but you have to dedicate yourself to get way past that. And I've got developers on the team that are beyond imaginable for the level of creativity and coding that I could ever get to. So I tend to come up with the ideas for some things and ask them to build them for me now.
That's kind of interesting. So you basically, how we see it, if we have an idea, and we have had quite a few ideas between me and Alex and Nick as well, who's not on the call now, because I think it's quite late already down under in Australia, so he skipped today. But really a lot of ideas generally related to, being creative, making creativity easy to step in for people who don't know music theory and all this kind of stuff. But there we understand also from a product development perspective that we might have an idea, and we typically try to do it pretty quickly, to have something which people can sort of give feedback on, and then we listen to them that, okay, we thought this was good, but actually nobody's using it, so we'll get rid of it. And this is also how typical lean startups are doing product development. So they are really listening to their customers and honing in on what makes this product, whether that's software or hardware, what makes it unique, what makes people buy it, and what makes people even love it even more than anything else. But you're kind of doing that already in the ideation phase by talking to other developers, other like-minded individuals. And that's kind of how I see your role, what you just described, that you kind of are trying to figure out how can we make this specific idea maybe the best it can be, and then as a collective you make that, and then it's available for your end users as well.
That's so cool, because actually when you break it down, you're nothing else than a company, and it's your team of developers who really decide, okay, we come out with this application, okay, when we come out with this application, because back in the days it was necessary that you have really a company, but now you can do everything by yourself, and that's the great thing about Max MSP, that you can really be the creator, and no matter if it's worth it or makes sense in business wise, you can come up with that idea and release it, and that's just great. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And I genuinely spend quite a bit of time with the developers, speaking and discussing things before they join the collective, because they have to have a fit as people as much as anything, but they generally all have their own speciality, and they come from a place of wanting to create something for themselves that's excellent, and then the greater good of the team brings it past that point, and then it's like, okay, so I can do a video for that. Manuals can be done there, get some feedback. Carl over in the States, he puts the Ableton Live pack together. So we try and each member tries to do the bit they love to the best of their ability. And if there is a part that they don't enjoy, so if they don't enjoy doing the user interface, then personally, I love doing that bit, taking it and making it logical, etc. Then I'll finish that part off, but I won't have a clue about how the code underneath works when I press that particular button, for example.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's really the best case scenario for a company. You know, everyone works due to their passion. Yeah. And nobody does it for the salary or something like that. That's not so important, you know, and it's really great.
Yeah, we had a discussion with Josh from the audio programmer earlier, and he actually also mentioned this, that basically, you know, a lot of people have maybe good ideas in terms of VSTs or something like this, but then if you're, you know, there's obviously people who are good at different things. So, and this is also true for creating VST applications, and I imagine the same thing for Max for Live patches, which are really good. So you have guys who maybe really understand the logic and maybe the maths and all this kind of stuff underlying the actual tool, but then the UI, you know, what makes sense, what should it look like, it's user friendly. These kind of things are maybe they have no clue about, they're not interested, but at the same time, the users or your customers, people are nowadays, I think, pretty spoiled in terms of how well certain things should work. Absolutely. You know, if you think about the interface that they're used to on a, let's say, daily basis, you know, their smartphones and stuff, they look really simple maybe, but actually the amount of user testing that's gone into those, interfaces like Facebook and Instagram and whatever other kind of UI you're looking at, that's just tremendous. And the amount of testing they still do on an ongoing basis to make sure that, hey, should this button be, you know, light blue or dark blue, and you know, how many pixels from the left should this be? There's like an insane amount of testing going into that. And as sort of individual developer, you can never get close to that, but you can at least get quite close to it. And there, you know, you need to collaborate with other people who maybe have a passion for it, because they are kind of they can tell a little bit better. Hey, we could do it like this, and then it will be so much better right away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do take a lot of cues from Ableton themselves. They have very exacting standards when they release something native. And I'm one of a part of the crashologists, the alpha testers for those guys, and various other bits of software, beta testing, etc. And when you get to the beta tester stage and you see their logic and how they put things together, and you start to go, this isn't an accident that they ended up at that point. And if you can take inspiration from that and feed it back and keep developing, and it just becomes better. We kind of probably 3 or 4 years ago tried to instill, if Ableton themselves are releasing a Max for Live device that looks like that and behaves like that, then our devices should be as close to that within our own individual style as well. But there's a reason that they're like that. It's for user acceptance as part of the overall, well, you've got Ableton Live and then there's Max for Live, and we want people to utilize that. So we make the Max for Live devices as much like the Ableton Live native devices. And if we take our cues from their design, but add our own spin to it, then that helps with user acceptance again. So like you say, you just want to put it in and get it used. Simple.
Yeah, exactly. Are your experience, by the way, with Bitwig?
It's something that I have now just got on my Mac, and I haven't as yet dived in. But it's on my list of things to do. Last year, my brain was taken up with Resolume and graphics and stuff along those lines. I think I'm as far as I need to be without actually going down a rabbit hole of their new Wire software or going into Touch Designer territory. I'm happy where I'm at. So I think I need to give Bitwig a go, even if it's just to understand how they do things differently and how much of that could influence what we do.
Exactly. Just for information or for the listeners, Bitwig it's another digital audio workstation in a way, and as far as I know, it's a company from Berlin, and Ableton developers gathered together and came up with the company. And yeah, they made a lot of noise so over the last 2 years, and a lot of people are really attracted by this software, due to the possibilities, the user interface and stuff like that.
There are a lot of big names, and I can't assume any sort of marketing budget that people are being given or whatever. But someone like Richie Horton, who I look up to as an innovator and going, he's not fixated that he uses. I know he uses Live. He's a previous customer of ours, but he also uses Bitwig. He uses the tool that does the job for what he needs it to achieve. It's been so on my radar that at various trade shows I've always stayed and watched the Bitwig demonstration and gone, no, I haven't got the capacity to take that on board as well. And I think I'm at the point now I can't ignore it anymore. I don't think it would be a commercially viable avenue for us to go down into Bitwig packs and devices and things like that, because it seems, from the point of view of modulators and that kind of thing, it's very much you build it in there without having to know the code. One of our products, Modulate, which was originally called Signal, but we forgot to check copyright with the guys at Output, so they very kindly let us change the name before going to court, so we thank them for that. Modulate we released the week before Bitwig released their update that included modulators. And it was like, we couldn't have rushed ours out, but Modulate allows you to build your own modulation. It's like a toolkit to the nth degree without having to know a single line of code. You just pull the blocks in and put it together. And Wire for Resolume looks very similar. It's the same connector node, do your mathematics and send it to an output. But that appeals to that smaller percentage of people who want to build their own thing. It comes with loads and loads of presets. But if you I want 7 LFOs summed together to 1 LFO and then shifted up and down by, that's the product that will do it. From a concept point of view, at maximum, we will have a complete customizable toolkit right at the top. Then there'll be another product that will do a similar thing. Modulation at the end of the day is modulation, but this will have a more preconceived, this is what you're going to use it for with presets. And then there'll be a final literal press 3 buttons and you've got 3 choices. And there's going to be people at different points in their experience with Ableton Live, or like you said earlier, people that actually want their music written for them to a degree, an inspiration. There's going to be those different levels of people and different products appeal. And we on the really complex ones, we sometimes get the feedback, I haven't got a clue what was going on in this video. And I can't really apologize for that, because therefore this product isn't really targeted at you.
Sure.
It is what it is sometimes. You can't win everybody.
That's true. Hey, so we're gonna be releasing the Fade application very, very soon. It's something that Nick has been making. Alex, would you like to explain in your words? We'll roll the video as well in here when we broadcast this, but in your words, kind of what it does and why is it so unique in terms of what it can achieve.
Here I have referred to my theoretical framework, which I have developed for turntablism. It defines actually the so-called building blocks of turntable performance. That means, what are, from the mathematical point of view, what are really the roots of creating scratch pattern? Because from when someone sees that, he thinks, oh man, it's so overwhelming, all these different combinations and stuff like that. But when you break it down, when you get the building blocks, you can create, like in mathematics, every possible pattern. And for the fade application, we use the building blocks of fader gestures. That means I have defined really the building blocks, and these are open, close, makes sense. You can open, you can close. Then you have a special gesture that's a transformer click. That means the index finger bounces to the thumb, which gives a special sound. Then there's a reverse transformer where you do the opposite. And the concept of the reverse transformer, because this technique, it's not so common in turntablism. So as far as I know, there's nobody who plays it except me, because I know how to do it. but the idea behind it, it's pretty easy or interesting, because there was always a difference, or there is a difference between a regular scratcher and a hamster scratcher.
Okay.
You know,
yeah.
When you hear Q-word in comparison to D-styles, D-style is a regular scratcher, you can hear the difference, and it is due to the reverse functionality of the crossfader. And the reason why Q-word, when he plays a transformer, he plays it with the thumb, and he kicked with the index finger against the fader. And that's why the reverse transformer is involved into the fade application. Another technique is, for example, or these are all these different combinations like two-click flare, because when you break down the two-click flare, it's nothing else than close, transformer click, and then you open it. You know, so as you can see, it's a building block. And the fade application makes it possible to create every conceivable fader pattern by using these blocks. And this works pretty cool, because you can draw this via MIDI. You know, every MIDI channel or MIDI block is relates to a certain fader technique, and due to that, you can create your own pattern and, I don't know, play it as a triplet mode or in swing or something like that. That's the fade. And it runs with,
that's in a nutshell, maybe also, especially from the theoretical point of view. So that's a really kind of really in depth, and then trying to bring it a little bit more into the realm of where people understand it, who are not as kind of deep in it as Alex is. But I think one kind of important thing is that we, you know, like you said, you can choose the building blocks, so you can have transformer, two click, all those kind of things in time with, you know, the tempo. That's important, and then you can basically hear what that sounds like. So if you would move your record, or you have a sound coming through, but generally, if you want to practice these patterns with a turntable, you would move your record back and forth, and then route it through Ableton. So you could kind of hear what it would sound like in terms of the acoustic kind of result. But what of course is way more interesting for some people is that now these kind of patterns and these gating effects, in a way, are available in this plugin, and you can also apply that to something else on the volume, like modulation or an effect or something like this, or through your whatever you're playing in Ableton itself. So it doesn't need to be, you know, sort of a turntable routed through it. So, and that suddenly is then, it's not anymore, hey, this is maybe some kind of scratching training type of tool. It's suddenly an extra element of creativity for people who want to make crazy sounds or crazy kind of results with their plugins, which often I think is the case when people are not necessarily looking for kind of new sounds, but also new ways of modulating their you know, their tracks and the patterns and maybe their vocals or something like this.
Exactly, and this brings us back to our previous discussion: make it affordable for everyone. You know, because as you know, turntablism, it takes a lot of experience, a lot of training to get this down. And the cool thing, as Bob mentioned, is really when you break it down, what you do as a turntablist, you work actually with one parameter, one musical parameter, and this is volume, right? You open the volume, you close the volume. But what you can do now with Ableton, you can change this parameter. You can use frequency. You can use a flanger effect. That means you use the gestures of fader performances, but you assign it to a parameter as you
something
want it.
else totally.
And now it's becoming overwhelming. Now we come back to the discussion before, because you can do everything, and that's a cool thing about it. That's really amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. I was counting up there, 30 years as a DJ, and I can just about baby scratch. And again, I've always looked for not the cheats way, but some way to assist me and get the effect I want, but without the hours and years of practice. Exactly. Even if I knew the theory in the first place. And what excited me was playing with your Scratch app with the visualizer first. And I'll have to say, to see how bad I actually was, unfortunately. But that gave me visual feedback on top of what I was hearing to understand why I wasn't hearing it in the way that it should be. And you can practice and practice, and it almost gamified it for me, because I was playing against myself. Luckily there was no one else listening, but I'm slowly improving. Cool. If I set myself half an hour every day to do that, I would see massive results. But I do need to set myself half an hour every day to do my 1,000 steps. That's my next target of self-improvement, I think.
I mean, there's a lot of in between the Scratch visualizer and kind of the Fade application, which are both sort of having their roots in turntablism, different ideas, different kind of concepts. But there's a lot still around that which you can do, especially with Ableton, where we have ideas where, how can we take this further? So really simply, I mean, it's not really simple, and I can mention it because no one has done this yet, but we're looking into it at least. So because we know it's difficult, but if you could capture your scratches, at least the motion. So how we visualize it, because we can capture data points for how your vinyl is moving, how your crossfader is moving, what's happening. Is it open? Is it closed? All those kind of things. And then we have the data. But if you could somehow get that into, session data or something, and you could have those movements, and then you would have the Fade application on top of that. You could, basically play it back, and then in theory, you could also change the samples that you're using, and then you could even have somebody else record their kind of scratch patterns and you send them over to you, and you load them in your application in Ableton, change the sample a little bit. Yeah, something like this. And I mean, but if you think about it, not necessarily for DJs, because we know a lot of turntablists are definitely going to hate on those kind of things, because they think, I spent so much time in perfecting my 2-pick flares that. But that's also not the point. The point is that you will have, producers who don't have the time to spend with it, right? And they like the way they can add in some cuts into their drum and bass track or something, but they can't scratch for shit, and they don't know any DJs. But if they can ask somebody that, hey, make a pattern for me in all across the world somewhere, I'll load it in. Okay, I'll test it with this vocal. It doesn't sound so great, but hey, if I do it with this vocal, it sounds pretty nice. So I'll use that. Then suddenly it becomes more of an instrument, or more of a kind of a production.
It's a tool. It's
add-on. A tool. Exactly. Yeah. And so those things we're looking into. How can we somehow? So again, like there's a lot. The Fade application does one thing, but in terms of creativity, there's a lot of other options which we feel we could potentially solve, because we have data, we have the capability to build certain things, and we're gonna be looking into that. So to really take again pieces out of turntablism culture or scratch DJs, and how can we lift it up into a much broader realm of people who want to be creative with their DAW, or even something else. Maybe they only have a VST and they want to do some crazy stuff. Who knows?
I shared your original sort of teaser demo video of Fade with a member of my team who has zero DJ background whatsoever, a producer, and he's in a different country, different time zone. So I sent it to him late. I got his knee-jerk reaction, which was, automating scratches. Blah, blah. Then after an hour or so, just before I went to bed, I go, Well, I suppose it would work for production for people who couldn't do their own scratching.
man.
Like, okay, again, there. Went to bed, woke up in the morning. Yeah, but you could then use that to automate this, that, and I was like,
Exactly. Yeah, there
That's
you
took
go.
a little
point.
time, and that was kind of the mindset. I looked at it and went, it'll do scratching for me. That's what I wanted. So I got it at the first level. He didn't want that. He saw the second level, but kind of, it's not for me. And then he sort of got the third level, which meant to him what he'd apply it to, and that was the spark.
That's a great example, because this whole scratching realm it's linked with a certain stereotype, you know. And this is the scratch DJ with the hip hop hat, and he's doing like yo 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 yo.
5 minutes of noise.
You know.
Yeah.
But when you really break it down, what he does, he touches sound with the hand, with the bare hand, and he modulates this. He uses samples and put the human touch into it. And this is from the musical point of view, this is just groundbreaking. This is absolutely groundbreaking. And when you compare the fade application, the fade graph with the LFO, then it's nothing else, you know. And what you said before, when you put 7 LFOs as a layer or both, you can do the same with the fade gestures, you know, and create your own modulate system, but you use not the regular LFO graphs, but you use the fade gestures. And there are so many possibilities.
LFO.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And as a training tool, I mean, when you book someone and say, hey, let's do me some scratches, and you say, okay, I need some scratches in 160 BPM, played as a triplet, super controller, I'm out, you know, as a regular DJ. But you can use this automation tool, and it's done it for you. And that's the next step. That's the next step, just from getting a musical output. And that's why it's so important to come up with these ideas.
I know our mutual friend RK, doing his stream and then just literally going, not only did it look impressive, sounded great, and then when talking to him later, it's humanly impossible to do what I achieved there. I'm like, right, okay, that's just another level beyond. Yeah. And like you said, the different techniques of different scratches brought together, cut up in such a way that you could, like I said, never recreate going from the orthodox to the hamster. You can do it. I can't get both hands going in time. That's my problem. So if I can get that, doing that, and then practice,
you know,
and get a result, and that makes me feel good, then maybe invest a bit more time getting.
I know some of the best scratches. They can play drums really well. So I've seen some of these drum videos from these guys who can really drum well and stuff, and the timing they can do with they separate their limbs, so left foot, right foot, and their hands, and it's like I'm just like, how do you even do that? That's insane.
CKJ Sorka actually doing live drum and bass, and you're like, right, dum 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 dum. That's my level. And he's hitting out 160 beats per minute.
It's insane.
And the crazy thing, and this is also something what comes back to the MIDI controller question at the beginning. I mean, what we do with the MIDI controller, you just work with 2 hands, you know? You have 2 tools. As a drummer, you use also your foots, you know? That means you have actually 4 tools. And this is something what also has to be investigated, how to use all the other components of the human body to control more, you know, or to create this rhythmical balance. And when you, a good example of a DJ who are experienced with traditional instruments is Rafik, for example. When you hear Rafik, his scratching, it's so unique. It's really so unique. He comes from a family of really classical musicians, you know. He's really into it. He started, I don't know, with 5 years with I don't know which instrument, flute or something like that. But he got the basics down, the rhythmical basics from his childhood, you know. And that's why it's so important to bring turntablism on a level where you can learn it as part of a study in a music university, you know. That will be amazing. Hopefully one day it will happen.
Hey, we're running out of time here, so let's maybe start to end it off. But
awesome talk.
I think
it's flew.
Yeah, exactly, and maybe we need to do a follow up on this.
Exactly,
Kind of, if we have some more experience. But I think it's pretty clear to me, at least, and hopefully also to our audience, what you guys at Isotonik are doing. We'll put all the links.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I mean,
you
I think.
froze there, Bob.
Oh, I said we'll put the link to your website and all of that kind of things below. So we link it there. Yeah, thanks very much for your time and your
you so much,
enthusiasm
man.
also. So like you said, time flew by.
Yeah, man, really.
So I think we definitely need to do a follow up around all kinds of things audio related, but
Yeah,
we'll do that in the future for sure.
Mixers and yeah, yeah. The box in the background is the I had a DJM S11 loaned to me by Pioneer to do some work on a little project, and after 3 months I haven't finished it, so I decided to buy one because it was just that much fun to play with. So the Rain 72 has gone back in the house and will probably stay there for a while. Vinyl's up there, digital down here.
Right, cool, very good. Yeah, but that's actually before we go, I mean that's one of the things also that we at Scratch have been a little bit frustrated with, I guess, generally. So we've been also in turntablism for 20 plus years each. So we have a lot of experience, even back to pre-DVS days. And actually, if you look nowadays at sort of the gear that's out there, whether that's controllers or MIDI controllers or mixers, they all kind of look the same. The innovation is kind of far to look, especially if you look at the latest mixers. I mean, they all have like I don't know, a row of like 8x8 rubber pads, and then they have the knobs in the same place. They have like a screen, a touch screen, it's small. So I'm really wondering, like, you work at a big company like Rain or Pioneer, and you're like, what should we do next? Like, what did these guys do? We'll just do what they did, and then sort of put our own logo on it.
The difference between all of them, because like you say, they've got knobs, they've got buttons, they've got faders. Yeah. They all have roughly the same functionality, but it's how they go about achieving that and getting to levels of expertise. I was able to pick that mix up very first day and do a live stream with it and utilize most of the first layer of controls. After three months, I'm probably down to the second layer of controls, and I believe there's probably 6 levels past that. Whereas another mixer, I picked it up and I could basically do A to B. The effects were so convoluted. They started at layer 3, and I'm like, oh, the time needed to actually learn what I need to get something satisfying out of it meant that I didn't learn it, and I only ever used it at the very most basic of level, and it was frustrating. And that's for me instant gratification if you can get that, but offer me more and more in logical steps of progression down to the point now where I'm learning the key combos, the Street Fighter, that lights up a completely new thing. And hopefully a CDJ in a couple of weeks will add another deck to this on top of Ableton Live as well coming in. So push one side, CDJ the other, couple of Rain 12, mix in the middle. Oh no, I'm back on the gear hunt, aren't I?
The same with like Archive, Ray. He works also for a Sample Music Festival, so he's a tech nerd in the way, and he's such
in the nicest possible way.
Yeah. When it comes to gear, he's so. Oh man, where is your God? Where is your God? This was the headline of the pic from his gear or his Facebook header.
We try not to out nerd Ray on our Slack channel, but just a little bit of teasing, or he goes for it, and then we're like, oh okay, that's good, that's good, and he can't help himself. He's absolutely 100% perfect in the role that he does. Absolute inspiration. He's been the mentor for me for the whole of the Resolume stuff, and awesome. It's like, okay, I don't know how to do this, Ray. Right, go and look at the manual. Yeah, actually that's written really well, so I now understand how to do that, but how do I achieve this? Right, you put the effort in, so let's help you get to that. He's a great mentor on that. I've absolute respect for the guy.
That's true.
Yeah, on the note of instant gratification, that's something that we've also realized, that we want to make stuff which is easy to start using and that you get results. So effectively, whether it's software or hardware, when you touch it, something magical should happen, and it should be easy and it should be fun. And that's what I think our kind of our kind of motto really. That is, we want to have fun, but we also want to have that our customers are having fun when they use something. So hopefully we can achieve that. But okay,
that's the aim. I'm sure we will.
That's on that note. Let's keep it here. Thanks very much again, Darren, for your time today. Have a nice weekend ahead, and we'll be in touch again soon.
All right.
Excellent. Speak to you soon,
everybody.
guys.
Speak soon. Bye.
Yep. Bye bye.
Thank you very much.